You were assistant to the director of photography for WWF. Is that correct?
It was my very first real job.
Your very first real job. Excellent. Would you take a moment to introduce yourself?
My name is Marlana, and I am a photographer. And what my job is to combine somebody's essence with their image.
How did you get that job? What was it like? I've heard a lot of pretty positive things in my journey of people in that field. That, you know, a lot of kind of down to earth, mostly, I guess, mostly men, right?
Yeah, it's definitely male dominated. I went to college in Connecticut. That's actually where I grew up. And when I was getting ready to graduate, about 6 months before graduation, a friend of mine was working in the art department at WWF. And so he said to me, you know, they're looking for somebody to work in photo editing. Why don't you come down and apply for the job? So I went down and applied for the job. And by the end of the interview, my future boss said to me, do you have a problem with airplanes? And I said, no. And he said, well, because I would rather you be my assistant. And so that's how that came about. And I wound up seeing 32 states and a couple of countries in 3 years.
Wow. How would you summarize just your experience with that? Because, of course, it's like you said, mostly guys. What would you say that you've learned about capturing the essence? Because, of course, their job was to capture the experience that was going on.
Well, there's also a lot of storytelling involved in that. So I learned a lot about that as well. And also crafting these personas. Because keep in mind, when I was there, it was the age of the, you know, Randy Savages and Ultimate Warriors and all that. And obviously, these were personas. And I know from Randy also, in particular, although a lot of them, they gave everything. It was such an important thing for them to be able to say that the fans left wanting nothing. And so that also giving your all to what you were doing was something that I picked up from all of them as well. I never watched wrestling before I started working there. I knew nothing about it. I applied for a job and I was a photo major, so it made sense. But my very first experience was I got on a tour bus at night. I was assigned a bunk. We drove over the night and I woke up the next morning, went backstage at the arena and looked around and went, what have I done?
You brought up something very important is they created a persona and stepped into it, which I see very similar to what people have to do in their business because they may be shy, they may be reluctant, they may be not comfortable getting in front of the camera. And in my years of working with small businesses and going, look, you're the greatest competitive advantage you have. And they go, oh, no, I don't want to be on camera. This concept of stepping into a role, I think, is probably the most efficient way for them to operate. Could you talk about what you saw? Did they have time where they were not the role and anything about their experience of learning to step into the role? Because this was core to them. They had to have the backstory of the role, the experience of the role, what that character did, what that character didn't do, right? All of those had to be built.
Right. And also, too, at that particular time in the golden age of WWE, they didn't break character when they were out. So, for example, when you went up to a Hulk Hogan, you were going to meet Hulk Hogan. You weren't going to meet Terry Bollea. But I think what's interesting with business owners, because I work with them as well, and I do find a lot of times that they do say, I don't want to be the face of my business. I don't want to step out into the spotlight. But the thing is that helps, in my personal opinion, develop a level of trust and develop a level of, I hate to use the term authenticity only because it is so overused, but I do believe that develops a level of connection. And I'm not a fake it till you make it believer. I think that adds to the idea of imposter syndrome because you have already put in your head that you are faking it. But I do believe in taking steps forward and planting your foot firmly and continuing on and to reach a goal. And to me, that's not faking it till you make it. That's taking active steps toward a goal.
I agree entirely. I think I don't like the word fake it till you make it either. I think that builds in, there's important when you're doing this to not build in a gap between an essence of what you experience as you and it. You've got to make an alignment. Otherwise, I think that's why some stars fail and become highly self-destructive. There's such a gap there. And this idea of stepping into the role, but also building that role. And one of the ways I approach it is be your commitment, not your commitment to the customers. So this would be for the professional wrestlers, their commitment to the fans. Be that. What is that? What do they want? What do they come for? And then there's less of the you over here that's creating a split.
Right. And I think we've also gotten to the point where we're so used to the exchange of money that we forget that people have a choice of how to spend that money and how to spend their time. And when they spend it with us, that's a responsibility to me. So the more we can make that experience that they are comfortable with, that they are sure about, the better off everyone involved is.
Stepping into this role and identifying it. So when you work with someone, do you get them to identify what it is? Because it sounds like it'd be easy to map some of what you learned with the professional wrestling on professionals and small business owners.
Okay, what I do when somebody comes to me for images is there's a questionnaire that I have them fill out, and then we have a conversation based on what their answers have been. But part of what is on there is I need to know what makes them unique. Who are we speaking to? Because keep in mind that images are just a means of communication. They're an often overlooked means of communication, but they are a strong, powerful means of communication. So who are we speaking to? Who's on the other end of this, and what do they need to know? And then it's my job to create that bridge visually.
Excellent. And get them comfortable, which to me has to do with a lot of how you are with them. Just my experience of top photographers, a good friend, Charles Register, is he creates a demeanor that is part of his work. And I'm sure yours is the same way, looking at the quality of your photographs. It's a way of listening. It's a way of being with them that gives them permission to explore these things.
Exactly. And they know that I've got them. They are safe. They are going to be well taken care of. They are going to look amazing. I've got them. And they are assured of that many, many times.
What are some of the other things that people might not know about your early career that you learned of this amazing bath by fire of traveling all over the world and understanding a world you knew nothing about before?
That also taught me to not always take people at face value, because I can't say enough wonderful things about people like Joe, Road Warrior Animal, and, Mark Undertaker Calloway. These are just amazing human beings, or in Joe's case was an amazing human being. So there's that. Plus also my career, I started with WWE, and then I also had a illustration minor. So I worked for a cartooning and animation company, and we did stuff for Warner Brothers, and we did the Tom and Jerry comic strip and that type of thing. So that experience also taught me to not just think outside the box, but you can make the box any shape you want. Usually the only constricts are budget, but with enough imagination, you can make whatever you need to make. And then I also fast forward again, and I worked for doing styling and design, interior design. So now it was, and location scouting. So all of these things I can pull from to create these images and to create an experience for people.
I get it, because it's the context as well as the person. We've got the inner game, we've got the outer game, we've got the context. All of those put together to create the communication or message. And like you said, photography or video, I mean, people need to realize video is nothing more than a large number of pictures presented very quickly.
Exactly. And you know what? That's the other thing. People get so nervous about being in front of a camera, whether it be a video camera or a still camera. And we need to understand that in this age of so much information being thrown at us at once, how few people really are going to see that in the grand scheme of life. And I know for me, when I started to do any kind of video where I was on the other side of the camera, I did a real quick series called Move the Needle, and you were on it. And it was 100 videos. And after about the 40th one, you get over yourself real quick because it just becomes more of a situation where it's not about you. It's about what you are giving to other people. And it's the same thing with any of your brand photos or videos, things like that. It's what value am I providing other people? How can I express that?
Yeah, I want to talk about my experience with that it's not about being humble. It seems to be, I'm going to say, one of the motivators are fear and kind of this cloaked arrogance, actually. And I don't have all the language for it, but this is something I've listened for. What's stopping them from being on? And then, of course, the internal critic, that whatever it is, they have some unresolved stuff in their life and they haven't accepted that they are what they are. It's just like in class off and say, look, I want you to make a video and accentuate what you don't like. Like, see, I still have a little double chin here. I want you to accentuate it, lean into it.
Because that's what's going to show up anyway. And unfortunately, the other really sad thing to me right now is how many people are not showing up and instead choosing to create an image through AI. And I am not anti-AI, but what I am is pro-connection. And I do not believe that you can achieve that kind of connection through an artificial means.
Yeah, and there's a concept called the Uncanny Valley. I don't know if you haven't, look it up, because there's a theory that we have evolved as a creature to know what's a living human being and what's a dead human being. And that might activate a uncomfortableness with AI. So because of that, then we'll like be drawn to it, but something will be off. While in the possible evolution of the human being is, that was pretty important to know when one was still alive and wasn't. And though it may get to the point you can't tell the difference, there still might be an unconscious missing connection here. And for at least the next few years, the greatest competitive advantage they have is them. And, one of my statements is, imagine KFC without the Colonel. Imagine Nike without athletes. And the importance of the gift of getting over it, to be there for someone else. I really see that almost as a personal development program.
Let me throw this concept out at you too. When, especially in anything business related, but even aside from that, if you are creating an image through AI, you can either tell somebody that it's AI or not tell somebody that it's AI. If you don't tell somebody that it's AI, then you are lying to them. You are presenting something that is artificial. It's a lie. So why should I trust you in business if you are coming at me right out of the gate with something that is a lie? If you do tell them that it's artificial, then that opens that can of worms with, okay, well then why aren't you showing up? So I think no matter what, right now, I do believe that AI has a place, absolutely. I think it's an amazing tool. I don't think it's going anywhere. However, I think when it comes to developing a connection, it's got to be you. It just has to be. Because in this age, too, when we are so incredibly technologically advanced, we are also some of the most disconnected people. And I think that's sad.
There's a book in the 70s called Future Shock. And basically the concept is as we get more technology, we'll get more disconnected and need more human interaction. So it is the competitive advantage, especially small businesses have. And one of the things that concept in video I teach is make 100 videos and now you're ready to start. So that's cool that you took the assignment of doing 100 interviews, causing you to get out from behind the camera, which of course I guarantee opened up a whole nother level of compassion and understanding of working with your clients.
And also too, what I loved about doing those videos is you just get to have a short conversation with people. You get to find out more about them because people are curious creatures to me. And I love finding out what makes somebody who they are. And I half jokingly say that I have to fall a little in love with the people that I photograph because otherwise I can't get you to fall in love with them. But that's really kind of only a half joke because I need to be able to latch on to all of the best parts of somebody.
I think that's such an important point, and that's that you understand, okay, here's a person and they're going to have good and bad. They're going to have all of the above. And my job is to capture the best of them, because if I capture something that's not them at all, then that won't be sustainable for them.
And people always want to lean into the best parts of them anyway. So I think by digging into that and highlighting those, and even to the point where I've had clients that they are just so beautiful and they don't see it until I show it to them.
What a wonderful thing to be able to show people the positive side for them to lean into. I'm not quite as optimistic as you. I believe that kind of the Buddha's view, this is the world of suffering. I think without intentional structure and form and effort, we tend to drift towards suffering. And so that's why having images that pull you out can be very good. The next thing I want to talk about is there seems to be a phenomenon of what I call socialized narcissism. And I haven't put my word around it, but there's a distinction between being there for the client and being there just about yourself. And I think again, I have no formal training. This is just observation that I love to watch all the influencers and everything, what they're doing. And a lot of the ones that seem to be what I call socialized narcissists get to a point where they'll then come out and say, the truth is I'm miserable, I'm depressed, and I'm seeking therapy. And my comment is, of course you are, because it's been all about you. I talk a little bit about that for you because you also are quite a study of human nature.
I think that it all depends on what your reasoning and purpose was in the first place. If you are getting in front of a camera to feed your ego or to say, hey, look at me, and you don't have, I'm going to call it a higher purpose than that, then I think all of the things that you just mentioned are bound to happen. And, on a higher scale, even though there are people who have made great fortunes doing this, they can also become the butt of jokes. People will either love or hate them. But if you are building something that you believe is a help to someone, whether it's your small business, whether it's your brand in whatever way that looks like, I think that is what makes those things not happen, because it's not about you. It's about the people you're serving. You just happen to be the face of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not critical of someone enjoying doing that too. It's just like it's okay to have ice cream once in a while, just don't live on it.
Exactly.
But it's something I've observed because some seem to be there for a bigger purpose. And again, I don't believe everyone needs a bigger purpose, but it's a tool that gets you so that you don't get locked into boredom. I mean, the truth is, I realized that I needed to come up with a bigger game in life because just being about me was boring over time. I thought through the plan. It's like, it's just boring. And then, of course, boring leads to self-destruction and depression and everything else.
I agree with all of that. But I just think that it is partly about helping somebody, but I also don't believe that you have to or should show just your highlight reel, because life isn't a highlight reel. There are ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and let's face it, all of us mess up. All of us go through trials and tribulations and things like that. And I think it's important to show those things also, but showing them with a purpose, not just oh, poor me, here I am in the depths of my despair and all that kind of thing. What's the point of showing that? What's the point in telling that story? Because I don't believe that everything needs to be shared either. I think that when people are on social media, I think social media needs to be approached like a rental property, where you want people to come, you want them to sleep in the nice bed and use the nice towels and swim in the pool, but there's always an owner's closet, and there's always something that's locked in there that's just for you. And the size and the shape of it and what goes in it is entirely up to you, but there always needs to be one. I don't believe that you share everything, because there are some things that people just aren't entitled to knowing.
I think that's so well said. And one approach I have is figure out what you're committed to and come from it. Because for me, commitment I can have consistent. My feelings or reaction to things is not going to be consistent.
I think, it's kind of like know who you are before you step in the room, because people and situations can be thrown at us that if we don't know who we are, if we don't know what our values are, what our core beliefs are, we can be thrown by the things that are thrown at us. And so I think if you know those things, then you're much more steady in what you present and who you are.
I want to bring that concept up because I think authenticity, you're right, has been overused. It's like, no, it's not permission to share everything unless that's what you're doing. If you're the inside world of all the neuroses of my life, then okay, that's the brand. All right. But this other thing you just brought up is know who you are. I want to share something because I think I struggled tremendously with that. And then I realized, wait a second, I just need to pick something. you know, I'm suspicious of this, that someone's going to show up at everyone's door with a little book and said, oh, excuse me, I'm a little late. This is the purpose of your life. You'll get all the instructions now. Run with it. I think you find purpose by creating purpose. But you also, the idea of know who you are, I'd like us to break it down, because if someone's listening to this and go, well, I don't know who I am, where will I find it? You'll find it by creating it. And then it will evolve from there. And so I feel you and I have done enough in life that we've defined enough of our purpose to know who's showing up when we walk out the door. But there was a time where my life was filled with so much doubt, I didn't know that. And I was looking for, well, where do I get that? So I'd like to talk a little bit about.
It was interesting because I want to say at the beginning of COVID, a friend of mine wrote a book called Black Sheep Values, or Black Sheep. His name is Brent Menswar. And what the whole concept of the book is that you find your black sheep values. And the reason why black sheep are not considered valuable is because their will cannot be changed, altered, or dyed into anything else. They can only be a black sheep. So when you find your black sheep values, then those are your values, your personal values that cannot be changed, altered, or dyed under any circumstances. And so once you, and in part of this process, you find the things that show up in your life every single day, because your core values will show up. We think that we have a lot of them, but we really don't. We only have a handful of core values because we have things that are important to us, but those core values are the things that are going to show up consistently, daily in our life. And for me, one of my core values is creativity. It shows up in numerous ways every day in my life. I think it's just paying attention to the things that show up in your life every day, the things that are non-negotiable to you, the things that you would not be willing to compromise on, and leaning into those things. Because once you know who you are, it also makes life a lot easier in saying yes or no to certain situations or certain opportunities, because you know where you already stand on them.
My verbiage is know what you're committed to, which is a little bit different but similar. But I like having both for people. I don't think there's one answer or one way, but you're right. And also deciding what those core values are, and then saying, okay, we're not going to move these, which is another important piece. So if something trying to force you to move those, that's kind of a red flag. You need to evaluate, maybe I'm not in a good space, or maybe I should take some longer time to look at them. There's a difference between a core value and just stubbornness. And I think we all have to wrestle with that of, is just stubbornness or a core value? If I have a core value, I'm not going to learn anything new, and I want to stay in my comfort zone my whole life. That's a choice, but you're going to be pretty bored with life.
And the other thing for me also is knowing what my no's are before the opportunities arise also. For example, I don't do brand work with anything religious, political, any of those type of things. If that is your thing, more power to you. I have nothing against who you are, what you're doing, any of that type of thing. It's just, it's too divisive for me. And it's just not something that I want to get behind. I have people I can refer you to that would be more than willing to work with you. I'm just not that person, because then I go back to, I also have to fall in love with who and what it is. And if I can't, then I'm not the right one for you. So because I know these things right off the bat, when I have conversations with people, I know in my head that, yes, I'm not the right one. Let me introduce you. And I have people that I can send their way.
Very important. I want to talk about no, and that's your approach is similar to mine when I'm meeting people to coach with them. If I can't get excited and see the possibility of what they want to do, I'm not the right tool. It's not that they can't do it. I'm just not the right tool. And that's important to understand. You say, okay, I'm 55 and I want to go to the moon and I'm excited and I believe it'll happen. I'm probably not the right coach for you. That doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just I'm not the right fit for it. And the other point you brought up is the no's. I think it's important to develop the muscle of saying no. And I had times in my life where I wasn't as good at it. And in fact, I want to give, for anyone who has that, practice non-threatening ways to say no. It's what I'll say. Telemarketer comes on, maybe hang on and say no several times and sink into your resistance to be with no, because you can't powerfully say yes to life if you can't say no. And a lot of people, it's like they don't want to offend someone. They don't want to hurt their feelings. Now they are constantly resentful because they're being manipulated by the world. because anyone who smells that, who's a manipulator, that's a magnet for them. It's like, oh, you got welcome on your forehead. Hey, that's where I'm going to you. So talk about the importance of building that muscle also of saying no.
Well, I think anything other than that is almost like the MLM or telemarketer version of business. Contrary to popular belief, everybody is not your client. Everybody is not a fit. And it's knowing that will also, and even when somebody says no to you, that just means that they weren't your person, which is a good thing, because that just eliminated the time, effort, and energy that's going to take. And now you can focus on whoever is your person. So I think hearing no is a good thing. I think being able to say no is a good thing, because also too, you, like you said, you want the people in your life and in your business and who you work with, all of that, to be the best fit for you. And the best fit for me may not be the best fit for you, and vice versa. But I all deserve to have the people that will help us get to the next level. And so in order to do that also, I think, as I'm going to say, as vendors, quote unquote, we need to be able to know who we can really help and who we can't.
Absolutely. I want to change topics to something that's shown up recently in my life, and that's there is a person who cleans our house and really became, I call him, part of the family, has a young daughter, and she was like looking into modeling, and then someone else I know as well has some interest in modeling, that I mentioned your name and you said you'd be open to talking to them. I don't know if they contacted you, but it's fine. But it's something that, to me, a young woman, I get the joy of doing it, but I guess the kind of father energy in me scares them of getting into it, as a lot of predatory stuff out there. And I'd love your advice, because I trust you tremendously, if someone wants to get into it. Not that, and there are guys that enjoy it too, and I think it's all great, but any advice of how to move cautiously in that, because I think it's an area I don't have a lot of skills in giving advice. And that's what I thought of you. It's that watch out. That's my advice.
And watch out is a good, there are a lot of predatory people in that industry. Anything that has to do with, I'm going to say, the potential for being scantily clad can be very predatory. And even just in the beauty industry in general. The one thing I can say right off the bat is, especially for parents, if something feels off, consider it off. Move along. There will be somebody else. Check people's references. Check their credentials. Don't get in front of every photographer necessarily that offers to take photographs. If you are female, and especially, not that it can't happen to boys, because it does, but more so with females. If a photographer wants to photograph you, don't go by yourself. At least for the first couple of times, don't go by yourself. It's just, there's safety things, unfortunately, that we really need to keep in mind. There are very reputable agencies out there. There are very reputable photographers out there. Unfortunately, those aren't usually the ones we hear about. And so it makes us more on guard. But if anybody needs a reputable agency, I have some. Yeah, and I would also get photographer references from other people that you know that may be in the business or that may be looking to break into it, because they'll be able to point you in directions as well.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. It's just like anything. If you got a gut sense, don't go down this alley. Don't go down this alley. I helped. I helped in martial arts, Aikido. I got to help with a lot of self defense, and there were a lot of women in it. And it was amazing the statistics of women who didn't listen to their gut that got really awful stories and stories. So this sounds like pay attention here as well.
Yeah. And even, Martin, I would say anywhere you go, regardless, people should know where you are. If there's a way to open up the tracker on your phone, make sure that somebody has access to find you, because you just don't know, unfortunately. And not to put the fear of God into people, but because, like I said, it's more rare, I think, than occurs. However, there are possibilities.
Yeah, in fact, that's why I have an Apple phone where my wife can track me, and it's because she has some mobility issues, and my stepson knows if something occurs with me, I want them to be able to know where I am. If I'm in trouble, I'm the main person helping her, so she needs to be able to get it, and then I've got backup plans of people reaching out as well. So I think both of these are pretty important aspects.
More thing in there, because one other thing that I would strongly suggest to is make sure that they are an actual legitimate business, because there are a lot of people running around with cameras that are claiming to be photographers, and you're just not getting what you think you're getting. So I would also make sure that they are legit.
That's excellent advice. That's excellent advice to have. And I love the one, take a friend with you on the shoot. Somebody that, and I would say a friend that knows how to handle situations, not just, it doesn't not need to be a guy or something else. It just needs to be someone that, if there's a real problem, they can handle it. And I know a lot of women where if there was a dark alley and I was going in, I had to go, I'd want her with me. We used to have a gal in the martial arts, Aikido, where we said if anyone held her up, we'd all pray for the person who tried it. Excellent advice on photography, and for anyone doing it, I certainly trust any of your referrals and information. And if someone comes to me, I'll clear it with you. I don't just refer somewhere I don't go, hey, is this okay to do? But I really trust you in giving good advice on that, because I really get I can understand the joy of wanting to do that and experiencing it and so forth. An interesting thing that's come up with me, because I have a men's book coming out this year, and you know a little bit about it. And in parenting, how do you, and this is a question for us to explore, not acting like we're experts, but you want to teach your kids the potential of life, but you need to teach them enough about the dark side of the world so they aren't naive. And I was blessed growing up in DC to know something that I'm scared a lot of people don't know, and that's how evil the world can be. And I'll tell you, that's one of the greatest gifts I have, of staying out of trouble, but also learning to trust people to degrees, but not blanket, and understand how it's a key lesson I feel many haven't gotten. And I thought, well, if as a parent, if I had a young child, I want them to know the potential, but also you better know how dark the world can be. And I'm curious your views on it. It's something I'm kind of working out in my head, and others might have views on this too.
Yeah. And I first caveat this with, I am not a parent. I'm just a really cool aunt. But I think the world that you and I grew up in also, because we were sent out into the streets without cell phones and without all of these things, we experienced the world different than, because it was also a different world. But even if you think about it back then, how often did we go places alone? We usually didn't. We had a tribe of friends with us. We were communicators. We we were not just more aware of situations and things like that, but also too, because we were forced to speak to people, you kind of, I think, learn along the way the people that give you that good vibe and the people that don't, and to lean into whatever that feeling is. I think we also were allowed to probably watch stuff on TV, whether it be movies or the news or whatever, that we weren't so sheltered. And I think there's a degree of sheltering now that may not be healthy, because I think you can overprotect and overshelter, and then they aren't equipped. And I think that when you're put in situations, unfortunately, one of the things that I really struggle with too is that, I'm going to say kids now, will go through life and they're staring at a screen nonstop. You haven't looked up, you haven't looked around, you aren't aware of anything that's going on around you. You also don't know how to have a conversation, because your conversation is taking place through a device usually. I think all of these things are very, very important. I think even putting them in situations, when I was a kid, I was around adults a lot and had to interact with adults a lot. I think all of these things are lacking now, and I think the more sheltered kids become, the less equipped they are.
Yeah, it's what I've seen when I went and spoke to seniors at my university. Is I realized I have a room full of brilliant young people, probably most of them smarter than me, and they haven't failed enough to have any confidence.
Yeah.
They haven't been given the opportunity to fail enough and that's where I came up with a bunch of quotes, and one of them, and I have a T-shirt on Amazon of it. If your life's boring, it's because you're boring. Life begins outside your comfort zone. And I still think that's a very important piece. Is if someone's hearing this and they feel they're under-equipped, find some controlled, not reckless ways to get out and start failing. In fact, one of the things I listen for is someone analyzing for a business starting out without doing enough where they have a chance to actually fail. I mean, fail where it hurts. Now you can learn something. But if you don't push the limit enough to fail, and I don't mean fail like you're injured or something severely, but fail and bruise your ego and all that, you won't learn enough to be successful. And the truth of successful people in business I meet, they aren't the brightest ones. They're the ones that hit the ground and kept getting up.
But that's the problem, Martin, that they don't fail enough and they don't suffer any loss. Because I think both of those things are important. It started, I want to say, with the everybody gets a trophy generation. We didn't have that. You were made to understand that some people are going to win and some just aren't. And it's how you deal with it. You can't dictate the hands, you can't dictate the hand that's been dealt to you, but you can decide how you're going to play it. I think, unfortunately, so many people now are so used to orchestrating it so they always get a good hand, or at least perceptually they always get a good hand, that they don't know, their identity is so wrapped up in that they can't bear the thought of failing or suffering loss.
And this ties back to the concept of knowing who you are. I just realized for a second there, if you don't fail enough, you don't know where your limits are. You haven't pushed enough. It's why when you meet some people, young people who've gotten value out of the military, they'll talk about they pushed my limits and then I got confidence. Well, they found out, okay, I can be more than the conversation in my head. It's kind of like, I thought of a quote, be anything but yourself, it'll be an upgrade because you're thinking too small. And I think that's another that ties back to what is the anatomy of know yourself. You've got to interact with the world. You have to fail enough. You have to go, no, I'm not crossing that line. Why is that important to me? It's important because of this. And you have to interact enough. And if you don't have it, being told know yourself is kind of an empty echo when I put myself in their shoes. Well, where do I go get that? And I don't want to admit I don't know myself. Look, I have more of an experience of who I am by my failures, by maybe agreeing on something and I went, wow, that was a really bad idea. I need to never do that again, and so on and so on. And even with when 9/11 occurred, it got me to sit back and went, okay, I'm for people living their dreams. These people were living their dreams, driving into a building. We better evaluate that value. I went, oh, no, your system says it's a contribution to others. Okay, we're okay. I mean, from time to time, something will hit that. And that's what will, if you take the moment to reflect and go back inside and go, okay, let's evaluate this. Oh, yep, we need to tweak this one word or something. It's like at a younger age, I had this motto: I won't hate someone for somebody else. And then I thought, wait a second. Sometimes when people are in real big pain, they need to go, that's a jerk. I kind of modified it as a way of I'm willing to do it to a certain extent to a friend in great pain. That was an amendment that was very cautiously but intensely put on. So I think you really hit the nail on the head of get out and push a limit enough to fail, or you won't have ever any real confidence.
I recently was asked to sit on a board of advisors for students at Reinhardt University. And so I'm currently doing that with a bunch of other people there's I think 5 of us that are in various industry pieces. One was an Emmy winner, another works on feature films, and we are helping with the art students that are coming up. We're there for them to bounce questions off of and get real feedback from. And it's interesting because some of the things, you try and help them to succeed. But even what I have found is that many of them are competing for the same job or the same client or something like that. And so you give them advice, but you're also then wanting to say to them, okay, here's the thing. If you don't get this, how will you feel about that? What will you do next? Because it will not mean that you're no good. It won't mean that your work is lousy. It doesn't always mean that. It doesn't always mean that it's because it's got nothing to do with you as a person. It may not be in their budget. They may want just a different aesthetic than you have. So I go back to no is not necessarily a bad thing. But it's also teaching them some of that also to be a little thicker skinned, I guess. But we come from this thick skinned generation, so
yeah, but it's pretty critical. You need to have a lantern, a shield, and a sword. And sword doesn't mean necessarily violence. It means the ability to move with extreme intentionality quickly in a situation. Talk a little bit about what you're doing now, because it sounds so exciting. You're doing some wonderful stuff, helping professionals, but also youth. I heard about the sports. I thought that was such a great thing. Young people that want to get into sports realizing they need their own portfolio is one of them.
I am working on a project with a woman who is called the Ghetto Country Brand Mother. And she is going to be doing the branding aspect of it. I'm going to be doing the visual aspect of it. But what we are looking to do is help these athletes that are in the NIL space right now, which is like the Wild West to begin with. But unfortunately, so many of them are looking at the immediacy of, oh, I can make all this money. I'm going to have this great career. But maybe not. Because the thing about sports is it can be taken from you in the blink of an eye. And just because you work real hard at it or you put everything into it, you can suffer an injury, or at some point you're going to retire, or at some point your career is going to come to an end, whether it be through your doing or not your doing. So what are you setting yourself up for really? Are you building a brand that will sustain past that into other things? Are you setting yourself up for some kind of a legacy later on? These are the things that they need to be thinking about now, not later on. Because the quicker they can step into this, the quicker they can help build it, the bigger they can make it.
Probably pretty important that you're going to have to share some tough stories of failure to get their attention. Sometimes you have to show how the path could lead to pain for people to pay attention. I always like the positive, but seems like a large number of people need to know how dark it can get to even consider the light. That sounds like a great project. Great project. And then the other things you do is you work with professionals and do amazing work with them in capturing their essence.
I do. I work with people in various industries, and also in the entertainment industry. And it is about helping them grow, helping them step to the next level, and what can we do visually to help them achieve all those things, and also to better make their. Of course, I'm saying this, and I realize the irony in the fact that I'm stumbling over my words, to make their communication more efficient. So I do all of that. I also work with the Miss North Carolina organization and help their title holders to tell their stories. And because of doing that, I've also am now kind of stepping into doing some senior photos for that age bracket, teens and college. But that's more of a fashion twist to things, because frankly, I wanted Annie Leibovitz's career. I just didn't know it. I wanted to work for Rolling Stone and I wanted to work for Vanity Fair. Instead, I got on a tour bus with professional wrestling, which was like being on a rock and roll tour. And now I work with pageant, and that kind of scratches the Vanity Fair itch a little bit.
I love that. I have a friend that for a long time, he did portraits for, I guess, Miss America or something. So hopefully I can track him down, maybe connect you guys together. He's an amazing artist, but he would do like pictures, art drawings of whoever, I guess the winners were or something. I don't know the details with it. Well, this is fantastic. This is what I wanted to do. We've known each other a long time, and I've really enjoyed being on your show. I went, it's time to have you on the Martin Brossman Show and see where it goes.
It's a pleasure spending time with you, Martin. Always.
Same here. Same here. How can they learn more about you and your website? Tell people about it.
Two best places to find me. Well, I'll actually give you three because I know what your audience is. My website, which is just marlanasemenza.com, Instagram, which is marlana.semenza.photo, or LinkedIn, which is just my name.
Excellent. And I'll make sure those links are below. This was a blast. I hope people, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe, click the bell, and put your comments below. We covered a lot of topics. I'd love to hear what your views are as well. Thanks so much. This was great.
Thanks, Martin.